Good evening, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with you on this September 11th. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather for your latest weather information around the last frontier. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with your local weather information. Have this number handy, 1-800-472-0391. That's the Alaska Weather Information Line. You can always find more information online, weather.gov/Alaska. That's got links to satellite and radar imagery as well as observations around your part of Alaska. Links to the Alaska Aviation Weather Unit, the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center if you want to check your gauges around some of the streams and rivers in your part of Alaska. And of course, if you'd like to keep tabs on what's going on in other parts of the country, the links are at the top of the screen as well for tropical storm and hurricanes around the region, including Olivia, and certainly on the East Coast if you're tracking Florence moving toward the Carolinas. All very important news for those of us who are traveling a lot and, of course, keeping track of where our loved ones live. If you have any questions about that kind of information, where to find that, or if you have something that you'd like to see on the show, please let me know. david.snider@noaa.gov is the easiest way to find me. Here's a look out at Haines. What a gorgeous day in northern parts of Southeast today. If you are in Haines or in Skagway or even Yakutat, temperatures today were at or even above that 70-degree mark. This is a beautiful picture, one I wish I was enjoying right about probably there. Hopefully you've had a good day where you are, and even as a little weak front is sitting right across northern parts of Southeast, it is just enough to draw that air over the Chilkat Range, and wow, what a beautiful afternoon there in Haines, and again, Yakutat, certainly Skagway, and in Juneau for that matter too. One thing to keep in mind tonight though is that with that pressure difference sitting down across the northern parts of Southeast and high pressure up to the north, you know that's when we get big wind, and there is an opportunity for some local gusts to come up during the evening and overnight hours, so be prepared for that. There's no wind advisories or warnings out, but it is a situation that the Juneau National Weather Service office is keeping tabs on for especially northern parts of Southeast tonight. So if the winds pick up, you'll know why. As we look up north tonight, you'll notice clouds are starting to work their way in from the north and from the west. The jet stream is still in that same old position where it has kept a fair weather across most of central, southern, and southwestern parts of Alaska this afternoon. Out west, you can detect a little bit of a southerly flow. Warm and wet air is traveling northward, and with that, we may actually have enough warm and wet air and instability across the central Aleutians to get a chance for some thunderstorms as we get into tonight and again tomorrow. As some of that instability travels north and east, it could end up between St. Paul, St. George, and Unalaska and Dutch Harbor. So if you're out on the boat and you think you hear a crack of thunder or see a flash of lightning, that could be exactly what you're looking at there, a chance of thunderstorms as we head through tonight and into tomorrow, maybe even into early Thursday morning. Across the north and the west, the jet stream is blowing some active weather that way. You'll see more clouds and a better chance of precipitation there. You can see the front still across eastern parts of Russia, though, as high pressure is guiding that in from west to east. There are some patchy areas of light rain. Fort Yukon was seeing a little bit of that. And there's our weak front sitting across northern parts excuse me, of southeast. That pressure difference, again, will help to draw in some of that air over the mainland and across northern parts of southeast, and that drainage wind again is what will make any gusts that we see later tonight. Plenty of sunshine across south central and southwest, Kodiak Island included. Just a gorgeous day all the way around. Up north though, as that front lifts through the central and eastern Beaufort Seacoast, the water may get a little choppy at times, and especially around Utqiagvik where the retaining wall isn't doing so well. Those areas could see some elevated surf. No warnings or advisories out for that either. However, it could be a little choppy at times in that region. The other thing that we'll notice is a chance for some rain and snow to mix across parts of the northern Alcan border, and especially the higher terrain, and into the eastern Beaufort Seacoast. There's a risk that you'll see some rain and snow mixing together. Otherwise, most parts of the Gulf Coast are dry, high pressure sitting across Nunivak Island, right over Etoll and Strait, in fact. 1,029 millibars there, will be guiding moisture into the front. So areas of light rain and fog should be expected along that boundary. It's going to be fairly close to Fairbanks, but generally north and west of that, over the Brooks Range is where you'll see the best chance of precipitation. Those R's with the little pointy end of the arrow there, that indicates the thunderstorm risk. We haven't seen those for a couple weeks now, but over the Aleutians they are, and it looks like that instability will travel north and east tomorrow. As we get into a broad area of southerly warmth moving in through the central and eastern chain, we'll get areas of showers and probably some light rain with that. It is going to be pretty warm, and with that again comes that risk of rising air across the middle and upper atmosphere. With that, there's a chance for those shower and storm clouds to grow, so keep your eye on that if you're heading out to sea. High pressure sitting across the Yukon Delta doesn't move too much, and it doesn't grow or weaken it much at all, so sitting very close to Norton Sound and pushing this frontal boundary slowly eastward into more parts of Canada. Southeast looks pretty dry, but more clouds will be seen over the course of the next couple of days. A trough of low pressure sits across the Kenai Peninsula and just offshore of southeast. And remember, with high pressure here guiding air in and down toward this weakness or that trough where less air remains, will pretty much be drawing in air off the mainland. Again, that could create some breezy conditions at least. As we get into Thursday, the pattern is starting to show signs of moving around a little bit more. We still have low pressure out in the west. We still have a broad southerly flow. We're not seeing that hint of instability anymore, so the risk of shower and thunderstorm activity, at least convective stuff, really starts to go down quite a bit. Up north, high pressure sitting across the Beaufort Sea at 1,032 millibars is still pushing air toward the southeast coast and the northern Gulf Coast. We still have troughs of low pressure here, but we don't have that same setup that's going to create really, really warm temperatures across more parts of southern, western, and southeastern Alaska. So things are starting to change as we get toward the end of the week. Keep that in mind. As we get into your Wednesday morning, temps are in the 40s for southeast, a mild night there, but if the wind is blowing, your overnight lows could be considerably different and significantly different at that than somebody down the road that doesn't have that wind going overnight. So if you get the wind, plan on a much warmer night than your neighbor. Out across Prince William Sound, temps in the 30s and 40s there, fairly mild for the Susitna Valley, the interior, the west, all reasonably in the mid to upper 40-degree range. Even the North Slope holding in the upper 30s and lower 40s tonight. Kaktovik might be the exception at 31. 40s and 50s for a large part of the Yak Pen and the central and eastern chain. High temperatures tomorrow, upper 60s for many locations there. Remember that warm air is moving north. For southeast, upper 50s and lower 60s there. Upper 60s to about 70 for the Susitna Valley and Kenai Peninsula. The interior, the middle Tanana Valley, upper 50s and lower 60s there. The North Slope, 37 in Kaktovik, 40s for just about everywhere else. In fact, almost 50 in Wainwright. Overnight lows Thursday morning, 30s and 40s there, mid to upper 40s for many in south and west, 50s for the Yak Pen. Southeast on Thursday morning, a low to mid 40s should do the trick. 37 around Gulf Canada, 45 in Fairbanks, mid 40s for the Kenai Peninsula, Cook Inlet region, and Susitna Valley, about 52 in Kodiak. High temperatures on Thursday, signs of change. Notice that cooler air trying to work its way into the Brooks Range. 30s and 40s for the North Slope, still mild for the Chukchi Coast. Kotzebue Sound and Kotzebue itself in the mid to upper 50s. Lower 60s for parts of Bristol Bay, mid 60s for South Central, and near 60 in Southeast.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
On aviation weather now, you'll notice thunderstorm symbols over the Aleutians for Wednesday morning. A lot of IFR is expected across the Bering Sea and the chain, but we're also expecting a focused area of lift or instability across the central and generally the far western edge of the eastern Aleutians. Warm and wet, unstable air will be moving northward on the south side of a warm front. And as that moves over the chain, we can expect the opportunity for at least some convection, maybe even a thunderstorm or two. It looks fairly warm and, again, fairly unstable by Alaska standards for sure. Out across the north, MVFR conditions across the Brooks Range, up north across the coastal plain. IFR flirting with areas from Wainwright to Point Barrow. Across the Norton Sound region and the southern half of the Seward Peninsula, maybe sneaking into the northern half and north of Wales. Out towards St. Lawrence Island, IFR conditions should be expected, and in the south end of Bristol Bay. For southeast, south central, and really a large part of the interior, especially around the Tanana Valley, Wednesday morning looks to be pretty good. You'll notice some changes, though, by the afternoon. MVFR spreads in across the Tanana Valley into the upper Yukon Valley as well. Some patchy areas of MVFR around Tanita Pass, around south central and the southwest. We still expect VFR. Similar conditions should be maintained for southeast. And that risk of thunderstorms spreads out a little bit more, but moves away from the central Aleutians as we get into the afternoon, as low pressure is working to the north and to the east. For the Kobuk and Noatak Valleys, Norton Sound, the Seward Peninsula, MVFR is expected again. IFR expands its reach a little bit into the Beaufort Sea for Wednesday afternoon. For Thursday morning, that area of convection is now over the eastern Aleutians and maybe just south of St. George. MVFR conditions are spread up and down the west coast. Look for VFR conditions for the middle and upper Yukon Valley to southwest and south central Kodiak Island and southeast, but across the eastern Alaska Range, IFR conditions may develop across some of the northern slopes there, and MVFR into the afternoon for the upper Yukon and upper Tanana. That area should shrink a little bit as we get into the afternoon. Southeast still looks pretty good for Thursday. Most of the interior looks pretty good. IFR conditions will hover across the north slope and across the west coast, but just offshore, most areas in the southwest Capes will be looking at MVFR and then widespread IFR across the chain and the Alaska Peninsula, but without the risk of convection any longer. Here's a look at your pass conditions. Anaktuvuk and Adigan Pass, we expect to see MVFR conditions for your day on Wednesday. For Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, things look pretty good there. All the way over to Rainy Pass, where we have marginal conditions there, and for Windy Pass Wednesday afternoon. Isabel Pass looking to hold around MVFR most of the day. Mentasta probably leans over to marginal conditions as the day goes on. As we saw, Tanita Pass looks like a good start, so move out early. Marginal conditions by the afternoon. Portage Pass expecting VFR, and also VFR for Chilkoot and White Pass for your Wednesday. Freezing levels tell the tale. We've got a lot of warm air across Alaska right now. The levels here across Kodiak Island to Bristol Bay, southwest, all the way to the eastern chain at or above 14,000 feet right now. And across the border, you'll see levels around 2, 4, even 6,000 feet, and that's stretching into southeastern Alaska. Right along the outer coast, it's around 8,000 feet. Most of the interior is looking at levels between 8 and about 12,000 feet. And the western chain, you can see some of that cooler air trying to cut in across the far edges of the map. Icing potential is present, but it's also pretty high up there, above 10,000 feet along the Alcan border. Hit and miss across the interior and then out across the western edge of the Brooks Range, also at generally high levels for light to isolated moderate. A very large trough across the west coast. A long longitudinal flow from north to south is helping to keep this ridge in place across most of Alaska, and the heat, of course, is one of the results of that. There are waves of low pressure out there, but they're not moving very quickly. Right now, that wave is centered way out across the north and western Pacific, putting Alaska in prime flow for very warm weather. When it breaks down, we're going to notice. Looks like right now high pressure sitting across the western Gulf. Southerlies across the chain, 40 to 50 knots there. North and westerlies across the interior. You can see wind speeds across southeast also around 20 to 25. The lightest winds right now just around Sandpoint, 15 to 30 knots there. A similar pattern here at 3,000 feet. You can see the high pressure anchor is a little bit closer to the Yukon Delta and Norton Sound. Southerlies a little stronger here at this level and out across the western Bering. Some of those winds up to 45 knots. North and westerlies fairly light across southeast and most of the eastern interior and south central around 15 knots. Turbulence we'll need to watch for the north slope below 4,000 feet. The Kobuk and Noatak valleys there looking for considerable moderate. Also chop across southwestern Capes, Kodiak Island, down the Alaska Peninsula with considerable moderate for the central and eastern chain, and also watching for convection that could imply isolated but severe turbulence. So this region we'll watch will be below about 3,000 feet. A look at your marine weather here in just a few minutes. Stay with us.
When you think of a national park, you probably envision wide open natural spaces undisturbed by human activity. There are indeed such places, but even in some of the most remote areas of a place like Kenai Fjords National Park in Alaska, the mark of man is present. Marine debris is a menace to the farthest reaches of our globe, and even designated national park lands are not immune. In the summer of 2009, the Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance, a grassroots conservation organization based in Seward, Alaska, decided to do something about the marine debris fouling the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park. Marine debris coordinator Tim Johnson had first-hand experience with the issue.
The summer before, my wife and I, Michelle, had done a paddle from Seward, sea kayak paddle from Seward to Homer. Really, our eyes were open to some areas that we didn't realize there was so much accumulation. was very deceiving up front. You couldn't really get a feel for the extent and impact of it. You've got this nice high tide line that's quite pristine, and you really don't get a picture for the impact, the amount of debris in that area until you get behind those storm berms. You get back into the lagoons and the vegetation around those lagoons. And then you see the absolute extent back into that veg and how intertwined and enmeshed these decades of trash deposition. So we were just appalled by that and said we got to get something together on a larger scale.
The Resurrection Bay Conservation Alliance is a local nonprofit community organization, and they have been instrumental in helping the Park Service obtain funding to get larger boats to help move the debris, and they get volunteer labor and organize the work trips. And so it's really a partnership between the Park Service and the community to help get out and really get a project done that in and of itself any one group couldn't do on their own.
Most of that trash was baggable. However, there were large items, huge, piles of hauser line, for example, that we just had to hoist up onto the boat.
The volunteers didn't just bag, haul, and hoist the garbage, but also carefully recorded what types of debris were collected.
In many ways, the debris itself is a resource. Archaeologists use middens, the trash heaps, as a way of analyzing past cultures. And in one sense, marine debris is a form of a midden. It's a trash heap that left for the future would be something that people could use to analyze our culture. It may not say the best things about our culture or everything that we want, but we need to be able to document what we've done so that we can preserve that legacy, make sure that we as a society don't forget what we've been doing.
We had two larger categories of marine debris that we picked up. Commercial fishing means like, say, gill nets, large hauser lines, anything that would be associated with more of a commercial fishing scale. And then the second category was more recreational fishing and household, which would be general plastics, things like that. So we had about a 75% of the commercial fishing marine debris element, and about 25% of the recreational and household further out the bay. And we had the exact opposite the closer we got to Seward. Within the bay, it was about 25% commercial fishing versus 75% recreational fishing and household.
The trash is not just unsightly for park visitors, but also poses threats to wildlife and marine habitat.
Really one of the larger issues now that you go to this plastic that can really get into the food web and affect the food web differently than something like glass.
These substances, for instance, all these polystyrene blocks that are breaking down into all these little crumbly bits are further breaking down on a microscopic level, and how much of an impact that has, in this ecosystem is yet to be determined, but I think it's got pretty high potential.
Well known that sea turtles will eat plastic bags floating in the water. They look like jellyfish to a sea turtle, and Obviously, a plastic bag doesn't go well in the digestive system of a turtle. Albatross will see small pieces of plastic floating on the surface and think they're small fish and other food sources and eat that in their stomachs, especially in some of the northwestern Hawaiian Islands. They'll find dead albatross that have starved to death with a full stomach, and it's full of pieces of plastic.
We're affecting our local areas this way, but we need to be thinking about it from more of a state and a global, international scale. And most importantly, to try and focus on prevention of it coming in the first place. Because we're just going to see this continuing, to build up on our beaches unless we're able to get a little bit more of an approach on prevention on the front end.
Marine debris is really a global problem, in all the oceans, and there are many different sources. Global shipping is one. Fishing debris from commercial fishing, recreational boating activity on land, stuff blowing off land, washing down streams, people just throwing stuff on the shore.
Though the problem can seem overwhelming, Johnson remains upbeat about making a positive difference.
No, you gotta start locally. You gotta take control of what you can do, and make something with that, and try and move on from there.
Overall, more than 9 tons of debris was removed from the beaches of Kenai Fjords National Park and transported back to Seward to be deposited in a landfill.
People gave a lot to the project in order to make it happen. That was awesome. One of the most amazing experiences I've ever had, being able to put that large of a group of volunteers together, dedicated volunteers to put that much effort and give that much time and pull all the different agencies together to see it all happen was incredible. It was incredible. Yeah, very fulfilling experience.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
On to your marine weather now. The sea ice edge continues to stay in place. The multi-year ice that has been sitting north of the central and eastern Beaufort seacoast really hasn't moved much, and it's probably not going to move very much at this point. You'll notice there's marginal ice very close to the coast. If we were to zoom in really closely here toward AKwx, you would see a very narrow band of no ice close to the coast, but that is not a whole lot of space to get through there. So as you're watching this and trying to make decisions, feel free to give the Alaska Sea Ice Program a call and ask for more information. And you can certainly use the online tools to zoom in and see the very latest analysis at weather.gov/Anchorage/ice. Let's take a look at the forecast for southeast. It is going to be a little breezy in the northern parts of the Lynn Canal. 20 knots, 4-foot seas there, 20 knots into Stevens Passage as well. More of a northwesterly flow at 15 knots down through Clarence Strait. And the offshore winds blowing off the outer coast about 15 to 20 will continue. Look for 7 to maybe 6-foot seas in the region. There may be some areas that get a little more gusty overnight tonight and into early tomorrow, and then that should settle out into about 15 to 20 knots on the inside. Thursday looks a little better. The weather pattern is changing enough that the gradient wind may not be with you in southeast as much as it has. That also means it could be a little bit cooler there, especially if you get more clouds. Look for 10 knots and 2-foot seas in many places on the inside. On the outside, 10 knots with 5 to 6-foot seas there, and light winds as you head into the northern Gulf. And for Wednesday, Prince William Sound and the Cook Inlet region looking at about 10 knots with 2-foot seas on the inside, 4 to 5-foot seas on the outside, and over the Barren Islands, more of a west to northwesterly flow at 25 knots. For Thursday, light winds continue in all areas, still looking at small seas inside of Prince William Sound. A lighter wind across the Barren Islands as well, 15 knots there with about 5-foot seas for your Thursday. For the Bristol Bay region and Kodiak Island, expect light winds inside of Bristol Bay, 10 knots there, and westerlies a little bit stronger over Kodiak Island, 3 to 6-foot seas expected for your Wednesday. A little bit further down toward the Alaska Peninsula, Sand Point toward Cold Bay, you're looking at a south and then an easterly wind wrapping into low pressure, looking for 3 to 8-foot seas on either side of the peninsula, 6-foot seas up toward Castle Cape and Chignik. For Thursday, winds from the south will continue, expecting 20 knots there with about 4-foot seas on the Bering Sea side, 10-foot seas and much stronger there at higher seas, I should say, as you head out toward Falls Pass. Around the Shelikof Strait region on either side of Kodiak Island, 3 to 6-foot seas should be expected, with 2-foot seas and a southeast wind at 15 knots around Bristol Bay on Thursday. For the Aleutian chain, we're expecting 20 knots for the western end, 10 to 11-foot seas there on a 20-knot flow, otherwise 25 to 30 knots for the central and eastern part of the chain. 30 knots generally coming in from the east with 6 to as high as 11-foot seas. The higher seas still out across the central Bering. The Pribilofs are right about here for your point of reference. East and southeasterly winds across the Pacific coast with 12-foot seas there. 25 to 30-knot winds should be continued. And across the region on Thursday, southerlies fairly broad across the area. Don't be surprised again to hear the rumble of thunder Wednesday or Thursday as unstable air is passing over the region. There will be a chance for some thunder and lightning in the region. 20 to 25 knots certainly seems possible there. Notice that Kiska out toward Shemya is looking at a northerly wind with about an 8-foot sea there on Thursday on the other side of that front. As we get into Wednesday, an offshore wind from Macoriac and Etolan Straits southward into the Kuskokwim Delta, 25 to 30 knots expected into the Pribilofs with an 8-foot sea there. Westerly onshore flow coming into Norton Sound, 15 knots and 3-foot seas on Wednesday. That reverses course on Thursday, an easterly flow with 3-foot seas and east and southeasterly winds developing across the YK Delta coastline and out toward the Pribilofs, 20 to 25 knot winds and 5 to as high as 10-foot seas out around St. Matthew there with that 25-knot flow from the east. For the Chukchi Coast, south and westerly winds will prevail, 15 to 20 knots. We're looking for about 4 to 5-foot seas. Westerlies around Utqiagvik, a 5-foot sea there. Remember, there could be some high surf in the region. No warnings or advisories right now, but because of the damage to the wall, that could have additional impacts in your area. East and southeasterlies over the ice for the Beaufort Sea, 3 to 4-foot seas in open waters, 1 to 2-foot seas there on Thursday. Winds dying off a little bit more for the Chukchi Coast, holding on to 10 to 15-knot winds, generally from the south as we go into Thursday. Recapping tonight's weather, warm and unstable air is moving in through the central Aleutians. Because of that, showers and thunderstorms may be possible close to the islands and eventually nearing some of the Pribilofs and Dutch Harbor as we get into Wednesday and your early Thursday morning. A front sitting across the eastern interior will produce rain and low visibility at times across some of the northeastern parts of the region. It might even mix in with snow closer to the Arctic coast. Winds may be blowing across some of southeast. A fair weather wind will keep you warm, but also we're looking for things to change up a little bit Wednesday night into Thursday. As high pressure is on the move, we expect to see a better chance of showers in the east for Thursday and a broader southerly flow out in the west.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.